Hello, we're going to review just really quick for the First Amendment and the religion cases on the Establishment Clause and free exercise. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes. I know it's creepy looking at me. Woo! Deuces! All right, sorry I had to do that. However, we're going to go pretty quick, so I'm going to minimize this and put me in the corner, and then we can go over this. If you have your PowerPoint for religion cases, please get that out. The main focus that I want to look at is in the First Amendment. There is two religion clauses that you need to understand. Establishment, which is government sponsorship of religion, or free exercise clause, which means how you practice your religion. Remember, beliefs are absolute. You can believe whatever you want, but when you act on your beliefs, that's where the government can step in. So on this slide, Everson and some of these cases are the ones that were decided by the United States Supreme Court. And what you'll see is that schools sometimes are involved quite a bit with decisions in dealing with prayer in schools. Engel versus Vitale is one of those very first ones that outlawed the use of voluntary prayer. So when kids prayed in school, if they were led by a teacher, that is not okay. Abington School District versus Shemp struck down a law requiring the school day begin with a Bible verse and the Lord's Prayer. What you will see over time when you look at trends in these cases is that students can pray on their own, but when teachers step in or when the school steps in and allows prayer as a school-sanctioned event, normally the Supreme Court has struck that down. Stone versus Graham, no posting of the Ten Commandments because that establishes or promotes prayer. Wallace versus Jaffrey is a large case. The AP test likes this one too. Struck down a moment of silence. All they did was say you can have a moment of silence or voluntary prayer. And when they did that, even suggesting prayer was enough for the Supreme Court to strike that down. Lee versus Wiseman has stated that public school prayers at graduation by a school employee are not allowed. The Santa Fe School District versus Doe struck down a student-led prayer at a high school football game. This was given over the loudspeaker, and what that has suggested is that they were imposing prayer on people that went to a public school, and the Supreme Court struck that down. Overall, the Supreme Court has held that public schools cannot sponsor religious exercises. Remember, students can pray. You are allowed to pray anytime during the school day because beliefs are always upheld. Even prayer in school by students is upheld, but teacher-led is not okay. One can study the Bible in a literary and historical sense, and that is okay in schools, but teaching biblical principles may not be upheld. The evolution cases, too, are listed there. Epperson, the Supreme Court struck down a state law forbidding evolution. And Edwards versus Aguilar, voiding an 81 law, I think I said that correctly, that provided teachers had to offer creation science when teaching evolution. So these are the big cases overall, but I do want to get to a couple on the next slide as well. All of these led to certain ways that currently we talk about religion. There was an act by Congress called the Equal Access Act that said any public high school that receives religious funds must allow student religious groups to meet. I think that needs to say public funding. Just because a club is religious, like Young Life, doesn't mean that it can't meet at a school. The Supreme Court has consistently said they do not want to promote, but they don't want to inhibit religion either. One thing that we say is there should be a wall of separation between church and state. Wall of separation is nowhere in the First Amendment, but Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to a friend saying that the intent of the Founding Fathers was for there to be a wall of separation, and that's where that phrase has come from. Omaha West Side Community Schools, this was a case in Omaha. A person started a Christian Bible club, and the school said that that was not okay, and that went to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it is okay because teachers aren't promoting, as long as they can find somebody to help them sponsor the club, then that is okay. All right, the last couple, release time, McCollum versus Board and Zorich versus Clausen. The ruling on release time is when a student goes off campus to receive religious instruction, and that is okay as long as they are off campus. So, for example, if a pastor wanted to offer a history of the Old Testament up the street, students could be released. They can't be penalized for doing that if they wanted to go off campus. All right, this last one, Lemon versus Kurtzman, is huge. Lemon versus Kurtzman established what we call the Lemon test. So I want to make sure that you emphasize the Lemon test hugely. The Supreme Court said in the Lemon test, the ruling, that when dealing with cases and religion, that there were three things you had to look at. Number one, is the purpose secular? There's two words, secular, which means worldly, sectarian means religious. So in this purpose, for example, if it says, can the government provide textbooks for students? The government can, because it's a secular purpose, like a math textbook. Number two, the effect of whatever it is that they are offering or holding in the law cannot advance religion, but it can't inhibit it either. And that's what we talked about, like the religious clubs. It can't advance, but it can't inhibit it. And number three, and this is the largest ruling, it must avoid excessive entanglement. For example, if a teacher, if the government were to pay teacher salaries for private schools, such as LeBlond, a Catholic school, or St. Joseph Christian, can they pay for teachers? And the answer there is no, because the Supreme Court said that involves too much excessive entanglement, that they would have to constantly be checking that a teacher wasn't promoting religion. And in all senses, that probably isn't going to happen. The example that I have listed here, Zellman versus Harris, the Supreme Court upheld Ohio's experimental school choice plan. This has been a more recent case, so the Zellman case could be one that you see. Under the plan, parents in Cleveland, I spelled that wrong. I'm so sorry, can receive vouchers, which is in a sense a grant or for a tuition payment from the state, and use them to send their children to private or to private schools. Note the ruling on this. This is a 5-4 ruling. The vouchers are very controversial in a lot of cases, but if a public school is not providing the service that some parents want, Ohio, in this case, has said that they'd like equal education, so the state is funding them to send them to a private school. All right, the last several things deal with the government and seasonal displays. And what the government says here in the Lynch case and the County of Allegheny versus ACLU, that if there is a holiday display, for example at Christmas, you can't just give a seasonal thing like a Christmas tree or the creche, which is the nativity scene. There have to be multiple things, secular and sectarian. So think of Krug Park. When you drive through Krug Park, you see the Santa Claus displays, you see Frosty the Snowman throwing the snowball, but you also see Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus. A lot of those things are secular, but some are religious as well. And so they have ruled that a county or city can't promote one singular religion, but if they have several things, then that is okay to have, or if you can prove that's in a historical setting. Those are tend to be the rulings in that. All right, last one really quick, and then I'll end this one on religion. The second part of the free or the freedom of religion is the free exercise clause. And the blue part here is very important, and then I've listed a lot of examples. But the free exercise means you can believe whatever you want, but the minute you act on those beliefs, that's where the government sometimes has to step in to interpret what people's actions are. So it does not give a person an absolute right to act as they please. So for example, Reynolds versus the United States, this is the Mormon case that we have come to know. Is polygamy okay? In the Mormon religion, and note the date here, it was quite a while ago in 1879, wanted to allow polygamy in the Utah Constitution, and the United States says no, that is not in line with the Constitution, so they overruled that. So that is free exercise. Jacobson upheld laws that require school vaccination. Some people say for religious beliefs they do not want their children vaccinated, and the schools in many cases have upheld that vaccination. Bunn versus North Carolina upheld laws that forbid the use of poisonous snakes because they can be harmful. And you can read these other ones, but these are all cases where somebody has expressed a belief, acted on it, and sometimes they're upheld and sometimes they're not. But consistently, the Supreme Court will always uphold beliefs, but can limit actions. Wisconsin versus Yoder was the Amish children cannot be forced to attend school beyond the 8th grade. And then the Minersville and the West Virginia cases, I would say to look at more. The court upheld a Pennsylvania regulation requiring students to salute the flag against a Jehovah's Witness objection. Later overturned that said that compulsory flag salute law was unconstitutional. So those two go hand in hand. You cannot force somebody to salute the flag because some people say that that is idolatry and that would be a religious intent, and they said we will not overrule that. All right, I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to start another section going on with free speech, but this last one, what you just saw, was on the free exercise clause and the establishment clause. The big ones, of course, the Lemon Test and several of the ones that establish prayer, but knowing the ruling overall is going to help. Thanks.